So what's important about today is how important the economy of this county and the city is for public education to be successful and to keep our students in an environment that provides them the opportunity for academic excellence. The Greater Salisbury Committee and the Chamber are committed to not only the dialogue that will occur today, but the dialogue that we will keep drumming as we move into the months and years to come, to protect what we have here in the county, but also to look at investment in the public school system, not spending money on public schools, investing. We have an opportunity in this county to move this system into one of the top ranked systems in Maryland if we're all committed to it. And I can tell you the business community, the Salisbury Committee, and many other partners here and not here in this room are committed to that. So with that, let me introduce the moderator of this afternoon's function, Bill Ferguson, who is co-chair of our Government and Economic Affairs Committee. Bill will introduce Superintendent Hanlon, and then we'll be off and running with our program. Thank you all. And again, cards, raise your hands again.
Good crowd, good crowd. Good to see. Good afternoon. I'm Bill Ferguson, co-chair of Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce, Government and Economic Affairs Committee. I'd like to thank the members of the committee, my co-chair, Carrie Todd, Sean Jester, Jessica Esselman, Greg Rydell, and Mike Massey for helping us put this function together today. It is with great pleasure that I introduce you to the Superintendent of Schools, Ms. Donna Hammond.
My pleasure to be here. Wow, what a crowd. I'm overwhelmed, and it's evidence of the support that exists in this community for public education, which is so very important because community support is the cornerstone of the success of a public school system. I also want to express great appreciation to Bill Chambers and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting our first annual State of the Schools. When Bill first suggested it to me, I believe it was shortly after he came on as CEO and president of the Chamber, I quickly agreed that this event would be a wonderful opportunity to provide a greater connection with the community and increase the communication and engagement between the school system and the community. So thank you so much, Bill and the Chamber, and for everyone for coming out today. I have so much I want to share with you today. I'm going to begin with the current state of our school system, then I'll move into the vision for the future, and finally, and most important, as Bill has already alluded to, both bills have already alluded to, what can the community do to support and assist the public school system in achieving the vision that I'll share. So let's start with the current reality, the current state of our schools. So what is the current student enrollment in our school system? That last year, and the information that I am using for this part of the presentation is part of our annual report, which you're going to receive a copy of today. So it's from last year's information. So last year, you see the student population, almost 15,000 students. That includes pre-kindergarten, which is 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. And you can also see the breakdown of how many schools we have and the different programs that we have that aren't necessarily or aren't considered schools but are a part of our school system. What percent last year of our students qualified for free and reduced meals? What percent of our students received special education services? What percent of our students were English language learners? Our ESOL students who come to us not speaking English. So let me give you some information about this. This is the graph, and I don't know how well you can see it, but perhaps just the chunks of color will help illustrate this information for you. You have a comparison here of 2004 to 2017. The state at one time called these three populations our at-risk populations. They now refer to them as targeted student populations. And those populations are important because, as you can imagine, we require additional resources to provide services for those students. And the state considers that in the funding formula. So the answer to the percentage of students who receive free and reduced meals is 61%. Special education, 12%. And last year's English language learners population is about 7%. That particular population, I will tell you, continues to grow dramatically. What percentage of our students last year entered kindergarten, according to the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment, ready to learn? 33% last September 16, 33% of the students who entered our kindergarten classrooms entered ready to learn. So this question has to do with our PARC assessment scores. These are our state assessments that are used for accountability purposes. PARC stands for the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers. And most of you also saw that our PARC assessment scores are steadily increasing. We have a ways to go. The Maryland College and Career Readiness Standards are fairly new, so some students are being assessed based upon old curriculum. But as you can see, we are making steady progress on our PARC scores. What's our average SAT score out of 1,600 to help you? 1,600. So our average SAT scores, and I'm really proud of this one, because we now offer, unlike what we experienced when we were in school, we had to go to a testing center on a Saturday. We now offer the SAT during the school day, and all students in their junior year take the SAT. And we are still above the state and the national average. How many advanced placement exams did students take last year? Also, equally good news about our advanced placement program. You may be aware that students who take advanced placement coursework sit for the advanced placement exam, and then possibly, depending on the college or university, earn college credit based upon their score on those assessments. So we had 584 students take 966 different exams. And 51% of those students scored at a 3 or higher, which is typically what colleges and universities accept for credit. And we had a number of students who earned honors and were named AP scholars based on their scores on those assessments. What was our graduation rate in 2016? The Maryland State Department of Education has not yet released last year's graduation official rate. So we're looking at 2016. Our graduation rate in 2016 was 82%. That is not one of the data points that I'm so proud of. But you'll hear more about the plan for making a difference there. How many meals did we serve to students last year? So what I'm showing you here, the first chart answers that question. Almost 2.3 million meals, including breakfast, lunch, and after-school programs. And I'm also giving you information about our transportation system. We transport almost 13,000 students on a daily basis. What percent of our general operating budget is spent on instruction? So if you look at the first two categories, we're close to 74% of our general operating budget goes into the classroom, and that's where it needs to be. If you include instructional programs and special education, 74%. I hope you, in fact, I think most of you know quite a bit about the school system. There's a lot that goes on in the school system, and we have much to be proud of, and I do want to take just a few minutes more in this segment to talk to you about all the things that we're very proud of, brag to you just a little bit in celebrating our success. Wicomico County Schools was named one of the best communities in the United States for the 6th consecutive year last year for music education by the National Association of Music Merchants. And Coach Butch Waller, many of you are familiar with Coach Waller, celebrated his 750th career win at Y High last year, setting the career wins record for Maryland boys basketball over 51 seasons, and he's still going strong. Wycomico County Public Schools has an excellent career technology education program, as you've witnessed today. We had 4 first-place winners last year in the Maryland Skills USA competition, and Joshua McKelvey took home the gold in electronics technology at the National Skills USA competition. 2 CTE students took home over $50,000 in prizes and scholarship money for their competition in the National Automotive Technology competition last spring. And Joe Showaker, many of you may know Joe, is our collision repair teacher here, and he received the Maryland State Department of Education across the whole state, the Career Technology Education Award of Excellence for Outstanding Change Agent for innovation in his classroom. If you don't know Marvin Lee, you will. You will continue to hear about Marvin Lee. Marvin Lee is an exceptional student. He was awarded last year the first place prize in middle school physical science category at the Baltimore Science Fair, and he's won numerous other awards for his work in science from organizations including NASA, the American Quality Society, the U.S. Army, the National Science Academy, the National Society of Black Engineers, and the U.S. Air Force. Quite a student. 6 of our Destination Imagination teams advanced to the global finals in the Destination Imagination competition that teaches 21st century skills and problem solving in our schools. 4 of our schools were named Maryland Green Schools, the most in any one year, focused upon environmental protection and restoration projects at James M. Bennett, Parkside, Willards, and Fruitland Primary. And our school system is now the leader in technology on the Eastern Shore in terms of a footprint. Last year, we completed our Wireless Everywhere project, which means that every classroom in Wycomico County Public Schools is now able to support 32 or more wireless laptops for instruction and online assessment. We now have over 11,000 personal computers and over 2,000 iPads for students. And we were able to complete the purchase of 25 new laptop cart systems thanks to the one-time funding of $385,000 last spring from Wycomico County Council. And just last summer, we started a redesigned summer program at our elementary school level. We redesigned the curriculum to be STEAM-based, that's STEM plus the arts, with authentic problem solving, partnering with the Department of Recreation and Parks, the YMCA, and Crown Sports Center for aftercare. And by making those changes, where we used to enroll approximately 160 students in our summer elementary program, last summer we enrolled over 500 students. Last year, we had 7 students who were Carson Scholars. You may be familiar with that scholarship. These high-achieving scholars receive a $1,000 scholarship for college, funded by the world-renowned Johns Hopkins pediatric neurosurgeon, Dr. Ben Carson, and his wife. And last year, on the AMC math competition, 2 students scored in the top 2% in the nation, and 1 student scored in the top 1% in the nation. And you may be familiar with Nick Seltzer, one of the graduates from last year. He was named a National Merit Finalist, being among an elite group of less than 1% of 1.6 million students who participated in this program. Last year, in addition to that, our seniors earned over $16.5 million in scholarship money. Mardella's Katie Kekerice was named the 2017 National Science Teachers Association Maitland P. Simmons Award winner for new teachers. She was one of our new teachers last year, and she was a national finalist in science. And Wanda Dawson media specialist at Westside, was named the Educator Luminary by the Friends of the Library while celebrating her 50th year with Wycomico County Public Schools. A few more. As a result of our fiscal responsibility and the outstanding work of staff in our finance department, many of whom are here today, we received 3 awards for exceptional finance reporting and budgeting from national organizations. And last year, in an effort to increase transparency in our community, we are now streaming our board meetings live on Swagit. And finally, last spring, we decided to relocate our Choices Academy program, and in partnership with Mayor Day and the city of Salisbury, that will ultimately serve as a community center in the Callaway Street neighborhood. And we're doing great work to include our school facilities thanks to the support of the county and the state with the replacement of West Salisbury Elementary School. This is not the most recent picture. If you haven't been by West Salisbury, you should check it out. Scheduled to open in the fall of 2018. The completion of the Mardella Middle and High School track, and we have plans underway for the replacement of Beaver Run Elementary School. And I could go on and on and on. We're very proud of our students and staff and certainly want to recognize their accomplishments. We have an amazing talent in our school system. And speaking of talent, before we move on, I'm very proud to introduce you to a group of students from James M. Bennett, including Zoe Scheller, Rachel Bailey, Ellie Kessler, Jillian Barr, Merlin Ornius, Tristan Lathberry, Michael Duncan, James Rogers, Jeremy Middleton, and Brett Mitchell, who will perform their a cappella rendition of Imagine.
Imagine there's no heaven. may say I'm a Jew, but I'm not the only one. Someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. And the world will live as one.
That's the first time I heard that. I knew what they were going to sing, but I hadn't heard it. Just so beautiful, thank you. We clearly have talented students in our system. And that was a sneak preview for those of you who are interested in rock and roll revival. And a great segue into the second part of my presentation this morning, the vision for the future. So I want you to just for a few minutes let your minds wander, and I want you to imagine Komen County Public Schools in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, and imagine a public school system that is achieving its vision. Hopefully you're familiar with these vision points. I'm not going to go through them with you today. They will be in documents that you'll receive. But I do believe that we can accomplish this vision. I've been doing this imagining what we can be in Komen County schools since considering and then assuming the role of superintendent. And today I want to take you into my thoughts and describe to you what I believe we can be. In a nutshell, my vision includes 3 priorities. First, my vision includes ensuring that all students enter kindergarten classrooms ready to learn. Next, that all Komen County public school students graduate from high school fully prepared for college and/or careers. And finally, that we recruit and retain a high-performing workforce. But my vision is so much more vivid than this, and I do want to share it with you today. So let's start with the foundation. You will recall that in the fall of 2016, only 33% of our students entered kindergarten ready to learn, and that's based upon the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment, which is a statistically valid and reliable measure used in all kindergarten classrooms at the beginning of the year across all school systems in Maryland. I'm pleased to tell you this morning that the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment scores for the fall of 2017 are being released today as we speak. And those scores, you will see that we have achieved an increase, in fact, a dramatic increase to 47% overall of our kindergarten students who are entering kindergarten ready to learn. And you might say, how in the world did that happen to go from 33% to 47%? We are just receiving these data, and so we have a lot of analysis to do in looking at schools and looking at prior care information, just a wealth of information that we need to analyze. But I'd like to think that in addition to, you need to recognize obviously that every group of kindergarten students is different. But I'd like to think that with the increased emphasis that's been placed across our community, that we're making a difference. But we do have a long way to go. When you break down those scores into the 4 domains, 2 very important domains in terms of academic readiness remain low. In the areas of language and literacy, 37% of our students entered ready to learn. Now that's an increase from last year of 27%, so still a dramatic increase, but 37% isn't good enough. And in the area of mathematics, 30% of our students are entering ready to learn, an increase from 19% last year. It's the areas of physical well-being and social foundation where students are demonstrating readiness at 66% and 65% respectively. Those areas are carrying us. They're important areas, but we do need that emphasis in the academic areas as well. So with 47% overall readiness, that means that only 53% of our students did not enter kindergarten this year on track to learn successfully. And I hope by now that you've heard through many conversations in this community that we need to focus, that we need to continue to focus on this issue. The formative years of life are unquestionably important. That's when a child's brain is developing and maturing as they listen and they take in the world around them, as they take their first steps and they begin to speak. What's happening to children during those formative first years of life will determine whether their developing brains have a sturdy foundation or a fragile one. During those critical years, if children don't receive the stimulation and the care that they need for healthy growth and development, then it's going to be much more difficult to catch up. They're not going to enter our classrooms ready to learn, and it's up to the public school system to employ expensive interventions academically and behaviorally to help to catch them up to the critical turning point that you may or may not be familiar with of reading on grade level by 3rd grade. Research tells us that children who are not proficient in reading by the end of the 3rd grade are likely to feel alienated from school and are 4 to 6 times more likely to drop out of high school, and the consequences stretch well into adulthood. Decades of research have shown that the best way to ensure a successful workforce in the community is to invest in early childhood development. The longer our community waits to intervene in young children's lives, the more costly and difficult it becomes to make up for early setbacks, both for the struggling child and for our community as a whole. Research shows that every dollar invested in high-quality early childhood education produces a 7 to 10% annual return on investment. Now, reflecting back on those scores that I just shared with you, the 47% readiness, what is truly noteworthy is a look at the breakdown in readiness of this year's kindergarten by prior care experience. When comparing the readiness of students who attended kindergarten to those who were at home or in informal care, the difference is startling. 56% of students who attended pre-kindergarten demonstrated readiness, while only 18% demonstrated readiness when they were at home or in informal child care. Clearly, when students attend pre-kindergarten, we're making a difference, and we need those students in our pre-kindergarten classrooms. But currently, because of funding, we can only provide pre-kindergarten for about 60% of our students. So I am very pleased to announce today that pending budget approval, Wicomico County Public Schools will initiate phase 1 of our implementation for universal pre-kindergarten next school year, with phase 2 and the completion of this important priority the following year. Again, pending budget approval. So as you envision the future of Wicomico County Public Schools, even 5 years out, imagine all students having access to high-quality pre-kindergarten instruction by 2022. Just imagine the solid foundation that we'll be providing for all of our students so that barriers come down, allowing a greater percentage of students to be reading on grade level by the important turning point of grade 3 and providing a solid foundation for their future. Imagine Wicomico County Public Schools offering universal pre-kindergarten and reaping the benefits of the research-proven return on investment for our community as a whole. Just imagine. But let's not let our imagination stop there. Once we have that solid foundation in place, I am confident that that investment will greatly impact our graduation rate. But there's so much more that needs to happen in between the first priority and the second priority, between pre-kindergarten and graduation rate, everything that happens in our pre-K to 12 classrooms. We're doing well, but clearly with a graduation rate of 82%, we can do much better. So imagine students soaring in their academic achievement because of increased opportunities for engagement in relevant career-related curriculum pathways. For those of you who are at the Economic Summit, remember Classroom C? Let me give you just a brief review of that. In speaking of educating the next generation, which is what I spoke to at the summit, I described 3 types of classrooms. Classroom A is the very typical classroom, traditional factory model, students seated in rows, teacher doing all the talking. Classroom B, the teacher's more focused upon student engagement and collaboration, with technology being used where available, but then there's Classroom C. In this classroom, the teacher understands the importance of student engagement, but the level of empowerment given to students is dramatically different. In this classroom, students understand what's expected in terms of grade level standards, and when they work together to design their own learning based upon real life problems and questions or problems from the community that they design themselves, a true paradigm shift from what we've experienced. True learning happens in our classrooms. If we truly want to prepare our students for the future, for their futures beyond high school, we need to be paying attention to the skills that will assist them in being successful in their futures. And their future careers will call for students to have cognitive and problem-solving and creative skills and abilities, the ability to think on the fly to a much greater extent than isolated content knowledge that they can so easily find now. So in the classrooms of the future, students are empowered to pursue their passions and interests, working collaboratively and creatively in groups with one another. The teacher acts as the facilitator and works closely with students. But the way students share and teach each other results in much deeper learning and reflects the expectations that students will experience in careers later in life. So in Classroom C, the teacher understands the need to relinquish power, and that's often challenging, but critically important, because relinquishing power means you're unleashing students' learning. And many forms of technology are present in this classroom, including tablets, laptops, cell phones, digital apps, and so forth. Many forms of technology. So as you allow your mind to wander and imagine classrooms across our county that look like Classroom C, I want you to imagine such classrooms organized by career-related fields and programs of study. And I want you to imagine a future in Wicomico County Public Schools where a variety of academies and signature programs are offered. In such a future, students could choose pathways to explore, and a transportation hub will allow students to make a choice based upon their passions. We currently have excellent options, as you've seen today, in our CTE Center, and we have a visual and performing arts program where students can select from 2 programs as part of their day. We offer an incredible JROTC, a junior ROTC program, and an extremely popular option for students in our schools that currently exists at the high school level is Project Lead the Way program in engineering. But imagine a future in Wicomico County expanding such opportunities for participation in a variety of signature programs across all of our secondary schools. Today, I am pleased to announce that next year, pending budget approval, we will introduce our first signature program at the middle school level at Salisbury Middle School, a Project Lead the Way Gateway program for middle school students. Middle school is a time of exploration, a time when students are figuring out what they're passionate about and how that relates to who they'll become in the future. And during this transitional time, Project Lead the Way Their units of study empower students to explore, to lead their own discovery. Remember Classroom C? That happens in Project Lead the Way. This hands-on program boosts classroom engagement and drives discovery and deep comprehension. And at the middle school level, as students engage in Project Lead the Way activities in computer science, engineering, and biomedical science, they are then thinking. They can see ranges of pathways and possibilities as they look to their future. That's next year at Salisbury Middle School. And as will be the case with all of our signature programs in the future, these programs will be available to students from across the county. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Imagine signature programs in our middle schools that help define students' interests and passions that lead to a variety of signature programs in our high schools, including, possibly, agricultural science and natural resources, finance, business, and marketing, global studies, health and human services, an international baccalaureate program at one of our high schools. And last, but certainly not least, and near and dear to my heart, my vision includes an expanded arts program and ultimately a performing arts high school in Wycomico County. In many studies, research links involvement in the arts to better child development and higher student achievement. And I've witnessed that personally and in my career, and therefore, I am very pleased to announce that pending budget approval, we will take the first step next year in a multi-year approach to an expanded arts program, because my vision includes that performing arts high school. And we're going to start with that expansion next year, again, pending budget approval. And my vision includes doing that through a public-private partnership for funding that school. In the first phase, next year, students will not only be able to choose from the 2 programs I mentioned before, vocal music and visual arts, but they'll also next year be able to select musical theater or interactive media. And this expansion is only the beginning of available in the arts in Wycomico County Public Schools. And I'm not finished. Classroom C also accounts for non-traditional pathways to graduation, including expanded pathways for online learning and internships. Thanks to our partnership with Mayor Day and numerous community leaders who make up the Youth Development Advisory Committee, we're exploring multiple non-traditional pathways to graduation that will meet the needs of all of our students. I'm pleased to announce that pending budget approval, we plan to expand opportunities for online learning, pathways to workforce development, including internships, twilight programs, and an expanded evening high school program where transportation being provided will remove barriers to attending for many of those students. I'm also pleased to share with you that because of our strong collaboration with Dr. Ray Hoy and his leadership team at Warwick, that we are continuing to explore early college programs, including such areas as computer science and teacher education, where high school students can finish their high school diplomas while on campus at Warwick Community College and earning their associate's degree at the same time. That in addition to continuing a strong offering of dual enrollment opportunities for our students. Lots of possibilities in the future. Just imagine in 2022, an expanded performing arts program, numerous signature programs of choice for students, non-traditional pathways to graduation, including early college, online learning, and career internships. Just imagine. With that solid foundation of pre-kindergarten and engaging instructional programs, I believe that our graduation rate will rise steadily from 82% to above 90%. Just imagine the impact that will have on our community and on workforce development. But my vision doesn't end there. The third priority of recruiting and retaining a high-performing workforce really works to reinforce those first 2 priorities. We have an amazing staff, but currently we have a 3-year, 3-year average turnover rate of about 20%. We need to do a better job of retaining our staff. We need to invest in our employees. That starts with salaries and benefits, and most especially teacher mentoring and support. We do have a high-performing workforce, but imagine the benefit to our students that could be achieved by ensuring greater consistency in that high-performing workforce. Just imagine. So that's the vision. Are you exhausted? I hope you're as excited as I am about the possibilities that lie ahead for our community. Now we arrive at the segment of our time together that focuses on how we get there, how the community can assist. So thinking back to the Economic Summit, I had the opportunity to discuss with many of you what I called a symbiotic relationship. A relationship that exists between the public school system and the community at large. And I posed the question, is it the public school system's responsibility to improve the well-being of the community? Or is it the community's responsibility to invest in the public schools for improved outcomes? And I believe that through a symbiotic relationship, it's not one or the other, but it's together. We're doing this together. The board and I are very committed to making our school system one of the best. In turn, our community must be willing to invest in our children, in our education system, to make these important priorities that I've shared with you today a reality. It's time to think about funding our schools as an investment, as Bill mentioned, in our future, rather than just funding public schools. So we need your support. I am pleased to tell you that many local officials have indicated their support for the implementation of universal pre-kindergarten, and some have even gone so far as to say that they understand that that means increased funding. And that understanding is critically important for our community. By continuing to fund schools, we can no longer, continue to fund schools only at maintenance of effort. So let me explain. All public school systems in Maryland receive a per pupil allocation from the state aid, that is based upon the Thornton funding formula established in law, the Bridge to Excellence in Public Education of 2002. The Thornton formula includes, or it takes into account, a county's wealth, its total enrollment, and those targeted enrollment populations that I shared earlier, special education, English language learners, and free and reduced meals. Those pieces go together to determine a county's state aid allocation. And here's a look at projected state aid for school systems across the state converted to a per pupil amount. At $10,193 per student, Wycomico County is projected to receive the third highest increase, the third highest per pupil allocation for FY19 from the state. This amount represents an increase of $179 per pupil over FY18's allocation of $10,014. $179 per pupil. And all counties receive a per pupil allocation from their local government. The school systems across the state, those allocations are set at a minimum that we refer to maintenance of effort. In very simple terms, that's based on a per pupil allocation times enrollment. Here's a look at county aid across the state for FY18. We don't know what other counties are going to be receiving for FY19, converted to a per pupil amount. And as you can see, Wycomico is the second lowest. If Wycomico County Public Schools continues to be funded at maintenance of effort, our projected FY19 county aid per pupil is projected at an increase of $4 per student. Here's another look at how funding has changed over the course of the last 9 years for counties on the Eastern Shore. I chose to show you these counties from the Eastern Shore because these are the 5 least wealthy per student counties on the Eastern Shore. And to include Talbot and Worcester County would be like comparing apples to oranges. So you can see from 2010 to 2018, Caroline, Somerset, Dorchester, Cecil, Wycomico. Pretty powerful. So let's reflect now, coming back to the 3 priorities. Let me emphasize that we are at the beginning of our budget process. So I'm going to share with you some figures that are projected. They're just estimates. We're at the beginning of the budget process with the Board of Education. But I wanted to provide you some rough estimates so you'll see what it would take to begin to make the vision a reality. First, our plan for the implementation of universal pre-kindergarten. That includes what we're looking at, 11 classrooms, phase 1, estimated at a cost of about $1.3 million, or converted to a per pupil amount, that's roughly $92 per pupil. Our plan for the implementation of phase 1 for signature and expanded non-traditional programs to increase our graduation rate, estimated at a cost of about $1.1 million, or $71 per pupil. And finally, to recruit and retain a high-performing workforce, the minimal amount needed. We call that the cost of doing business. For employees' salaries, health care, and retiree health care benefits looks to be approximately $3.5 million, or $245 per pupil. So very simply, to begin to phase in our priorities, we estimate the cost to be approximately $5.9 million, or $408 per pupil. So now let's come back to that anticipated revenue. Remember, increase from the state, $179 per pupil. Increase from the county at maintenance of effort, $4 per pupil, with a total increase of $183 per pupil. We have a funding gap in order to begin to phase in our priorities of about $225 per pupil. Now let me show you what that $225 additional from the county on top of maintenance of effort will do when we look back at, remember this graph? So in FY19, with an increase of $4, brings us up, obviously $4, very slightly. With an increase of $225, it's still an increase. It's the beginning. And we're beginning to approach the level of funding that we received back in 2010. It's a start. I do want to emphasize to you that I feel tremendous support from this community. We have a great working relationship with our local officials through what I believe to be a very strong two-way communication. We have tremendous support from our local delegation and from local organizations, including Junior Achievement in Greater Salisbury and Mike Dunn and others who are spearheading the Wycomico County Education Foundation, the United Way, the Community Foundation, our Sheriff's Office, the media, the library, the NAACP, Rotary clubs, the Optimist Club. I could go on and on. They sponsor and support us in so many ways, and of course the Chamber who sponsored this event today. And I know that in order to continue to experience this level of support, that you need to be able to trust that I take very seriously the fiduciary responsibility that we have as a public school system in spending taxpayer dollars responsibly. Please be assured that we are continuously examining our current budget to find areas where we can redeploy or reallocate funds to meet our needs. But in order to be a school system that prepares students to be successful in the world that awaits them, we need to invest in the public school system, in our community as a whole. Our community needs to look at funding education differently. Instead of thinking about funding education as just an amount of money that's given to the schools, it is investing in our future. So I've presented a lot of facts and figures to you to show you roughly what it would take to make the vision of reality, and I want to emphasize to you today that those figures are very rough. Over the course of the next several months, we'll be working with our bargaining groups and with the Board of Education to fine-tune and adopt a budget to take to the county executive and to the county council. I know what I've presented today is a shift in thinking for many in our community, including community leaders who have a very difficult decision to make. I've presented a very specific plan in hopes that you'll understand how serious I am about my fiduciary responsibility. And I ask that you, as community members, consider what it would mean to get behind me, to get behind us in requesting such an investment. Just imagine what we can do together. Imagine 2022. With an increase in per pupil funding of even $225, just imagine what Wicomico County Public Schools can be in 2022. Before I turn the program back over to Bill, I want to let you know that we'll be providing you with copies of a document that's a combined annual report, which covers last year, Achieve 2.0, if you remember. 1.0 came out about this time last year. Achieve 2.0 comes out now and just shares this vision with you, all under the cover of Imagine 2022. I'm going to end with a very brief video created by Paul Butler while those documents are being distributed, and I want to thank you for attending today and for your continued support for the students of our community.
A new day is dawning in Wicomico County Public Schools. Imagine.
So your first word is I.
Where kindergartners are ready to learn before they take their first step into class.
I love coming to work each morning. There's not a better school system to be in.
Our students learn something new every day.
Imagine where high school graduation rates approach 90%. Imagine where we recruit and retain the highest quality, highest performing teachers.
Good point. Why leave that safe spot and risk?
Just imagine. Imagine 2022 in Wicomico County Public Schools with incredible learning environments.
To make the light bulb go off in their mind, that's what we do.
Beginning in our amazing elementary schools.
Every student learns.
We're looking at this vortex, we call this the vortex.
Imagine interactive achievement. Imagine inspiring critical thinking at all levels.
I challenge them to be better than yesterday.
1, 2, ready, and play.
Imagine an art school producing award-winning talent. Imagine preparing our students for both college and career.
Wicomico County Public Schools are awesome. They push us to be our best.
Imagine.
Attention! Chorus!
Creating even more leaders.
We push them past their comfort zone to achieve a standard of excellence.
Our students recognize not only I can do this, but I will do this.
Imagine.
We ensure that every student learns.
Every student learns.
When they leave our schools, they're ready.
Imagine each child as a bright, responsible, and productive citizen in our community. Imagine 2022 in Wicomico County Public Schools.
Thank you, Donna, very much. Appreciate the information. We did receive a few questions from the audience, so Just on time, we'll probably ask just two questions. The first one is, with the Komen Commission focusing on pre-K, CTE, teaching as a profession and accountability, what are the opportunities in Wycomico County?
So the Komen Commission is continuing its work. Many of you may not be familiar with the Komen Commission. It is the next iteration, or it's supposed to be the next iteration of the Thornton Commission, which established the funding formula. So they're not only supposed to be looking at the funding formula, but they're supposed to be looking at some of the building blocks that would make Maryland public schools a better school system. And one of the things that's gotten their attention is universal pre-kindergarten. So I'm very excited about the possibilities that lie ahead. I think that this is not only a focus here locally, but it's a focus across the country, recognizing that that's where we're going to get the return on investment. So while I'm not anticipating any funding to come as a result of the Komen Commission in the future, I do anticipate, and I'm a Pollyanna, but I do anticipate over the course of, say, 3 or 4 or 5 years out, that our state funding formula will move to include pre-kindergarten students. Currently, that's our problem, or that's part of the problem. The funding formula does not include pre-kindergarten, so we have to fund that ourselves. So the Komen Commission is looking at that, so certainly lots of opportunities. I took the opportunity to go and testify before the Komen Commission because I feel very strongly about the work that they're doing, so really done.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. Last question. How many social workers are in each school, and how is their time allocated?
Okay, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to speak to that level of detail. Mrs. Miles, can you help us out with that?
Be glad to try, and I will also defer to Bonnie Walston in the back, as she will know our exact number. We have increased our number of social workers. However, we do not have a social worker in every school. They are working with the students with regard to their needs, their case management, things of that nature, and obviously share their talents across the schools as much as is possible. But I have a vision that I share that we will have a social worker in every one of our schools. The mental health needs of our students are evident, and we are here to support them in every way possible. Our total number, I'm going to defer to Bonnie Walston.
We currently have 15 social workers serving 7 schools.
And that is an increase just over the past year. So 15 in total over our schools, and we are continuing to try to increase that number, having them join us as our teams of leadership.
Thank you, Mrs. Miles.
Could you also comment on the balance of not only how much money is spent on education, but how the money is spent?
We have to make decisions. So sometimes we are reprioritizing and reallocating funding to go towards our priorities. But first, we have to make sure that we're funding education as an investment in our future and not constantly needing to make decisions about some of the things that are our top priorities because we continue to receive maintenance of effort. So I want to make sure that, yes, we are paying attention to how money is being spent, but we need resources in order to make this public education the best system it can be.
Thank you for all of you attending, and hope to see you at 2019 the Wycomico School Luncheon, which we will have next year. Thank you. And